Welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forward. And today I'm delighted to have with us Joe Wadsworth, who's founder and CEO at the online recording studio. So Joe, welcome and thank you for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to just to introduce yourself and explain to the audience what you do and how you help people, that would be great.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's great to be on the podcast. So my name is Joe Wadsworth and I'm the founder and CEO of the online recording studio. We are an artist development and music production agency that works entirely online. The clue very much is in the name. It does what it says on the tin.
Yep.
Essentially what we offer is all the services of a record label, but rather than the traditional method wherein the label takes a large portion of the artist's music, so they own a large percentage and therefore are forever taking a cut of what that artist is making. Ours is all pay as you go, work for hire. So all of those services that you get, you pay for them up front, you get them, and then they belong to you. So artists that come and work with us own 100% of the masters of their music. So we never take a split of any of that stuff. Same with things we do around branding and artwork. It's all upfront and it gives artists complete control, complete transparency, and a safer way to navigate the music industry relative to these big label deals that mean that you end up actually only taking home about 20% of what you should be.
Wow. So I knew that was how the model worked. I didn't realize quite the split was that significant to the detriment of the artist. So you're doing something quite different, clearly, than the current norm.
Absolutely. I think for a long time, labels and big players in the industry have been able to create those sorts of deals because they've been the only people who have access. They've been gatekeepers to promotion, to distribution, to all of these things that now are possible because of the technologies that exist in the 21st century. It's no longer something that you need loads and loads of money to be able to do to get to a certain level. And you see it more and more that artists who are independent artists are achieving great successes. Some are winning Grammys, some are going massively viral and getting hundreds of millions of streams without ever being signed to a label. So the circumstances are primed for artists who want to really take the bull by the horns and have their own initiative to be able to do that without needing to worry that what they are getting is not going to match up to what they can get if they, as I say, give away a huge percentage of their music. Because the more people that get involved, the more percentage gets ducked. So the label might take 50%, 60%, but then you've got all of the additional costs. And the big misconception as well about a record deal that still remains today is that if you get £1 million record deal, that's not just £1 million that you get. That's £1 million loan that you then have to pay back. And you don't make any money until that £1 million loan is paid back. And that's why our model, it means that, we don't front any of the money for the artists. They book for what they want, but they know exactly what they're getting, and they're not tied into something that's going to mean they sign the wrong contract and we're on the wrong end of a bad deal.
Brilliant. Amazing. Now, the word disruptor comes to mind. Is that something that you're comfortable hearing? Is that something you've been described as before?
For sure, yeah. I mean, the whole idea is to change the way that model works and to put the power back in the hands of the artist.
Brilliant. Well, that's wonderful because obviously I don't know enough about this, but I certainly hear the stories of people feeling very hard done by at the end of the whole process, which is so it's great to hear you doing what you're doing. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into business and why this particular one, Jack.
Certainly. Well, my background was always in music. So from very young, I was playing piano and some orchestral stuff as well. I was playing clarinet in various orchestras, sort of youth orchestras around the UK and in London. And I knew that I didn't really want to go into classical music as a career. I really enjoyed doing it and I loved the people that I got to be around for it, but it was never the thing that I knew was going to be anything. I think once I sort of finished school or university, I kind of knew that was the point where I probably would not be playing the clarinet quite so much anymore, which is cool. But I always wanted to work in the music industry, was very, very inspired by Mark Ronson when he released his album Version, which came out in, I don't know, probably 2007 or 2008 maybe. And he released this album, which was all cover versions. It was, so you'd know the Valerie, the Amy Winehouse Valerie that's on there. Everyone
Yep.
knows a few of the songs that were on that album.
Yes.
But that just opened my mind to what the possibilities were, wherein all these songs that had previously been written were formed into something completely different by someone else. And it showed me that there was this flexibility that exists within music that can be translated not just in the creative side, but I think into all of it. I think the whole thing is incredibly malleable. And it was just there for someone to come along and try and move the pieces around in a slightly different way. And that's what I've tried to do. And so I wanted to go and study music production. So I did music and music tech at A level, and I really enjoyed that. And then was offered a place to study at the Guildhall in London, which was, there was an electronic music course that only took, it was like 4 or 5 people that they took in. And in I suppose an act of teenage rebellion, decided that that was not the way I was going to go, which was a bold decision at that point, because I then ended up, I chose to go to the far less prestigious Leeds College of Music, which some people have had success there. For me personally, it wasn't a good fit. And so very quickly I was trying to look for a way out. And so I then started from my dorm room talking to people on social media and Instagram, and saying, hey, you're a singer. I see that you're posting all these songs every day. I can produce these things for you. Why don't I just produce it? I'll charge you £50. I'll make the whole song for you. I'll record it all in my dorm room. You record your vocals at your end. You've got a microphone at your house. You record that bit, send it to me. I'll mix it all at my end. And then the song is yours. Nice and simple. And very quickly, I realized that this was an almost endless resource of artists. There's like a million, at that time, there's a million posts a day of singer-songwriters posting videos of themselves, wow, with the hopes of someone seeing them and it creating some sort of opportunity.
Yep.
So very quickly, I stopped going into my lectures and trying very hard at university, and was just basically doing this all the time, and then managed to get a couple of other people from my university involved, and I kind of outsourced the production side of things to other producers as we grew the team, and I focused more just on talking to the artists and trying to build up a sort of client base. And then at the end of the first year, we'd done dozens and dozens of songs by this point, and I was just thinking, well, why don't I just do this now? So I left at the end of my first year, and we changed the name from the then My First Single, which was the name to begin with, because I was just approaching really beginner artists and thought, yes, well, actually this could work for anyone. It doesn't just need to be total beginners. Changed the name to the Online Recording Studio. I thought, make it as clear as possible what it is. Especially as it's quite a new concept. There weren't a huge amount of people doing it then. I couldn't really find any direct competitors at this point, certainly with a kind of agency type model that I was trying to build. And then, so here we are 6 years later, and we've added PR and marketing departments, branding and design. We've worked on more than 1,000 songs, racked up tens of millions of streams, and had things placed on Amazon and Netflix shows. And really, we're continuing to grow the team in different directions. And the idea is to replace the record label.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. What a journey, and what an idea. And what were some of the biggest sort of challenges you've had to overcome in those 6 years?
I'd say the biggest challenge that has been felt in different ways at different times genuinely has been my lack of training and experience around business strategy and business development. As I said, I have 1/3 of a music production degree, and that's my business training, really. I was for a very long time. And so I think there were a lot of things early on that I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yes.
And so then someone would explain them to me after the fact, and I'd say, oh yeah, that seems really obvious now that you explain it, but I had no idea. And at each different iteration of the company and each different stage that we've been at, I think those challenges have been felt in different ways. Some it's been to do with corporate structure and how that's organized. Some it's to do with financing and invoicing and accounting and understanding how that sort of thing works. For the people management side of things as well was something that really took a while for me to get how to actually do, because that's the hardest bit, I think, is the people. You're making sure you're keeping people happy, but also motivating at the same time and balancing all of these different things. So I think since then I've been able to do a few different business courses and like entrepreneurship courses and things like that, and that's helped. But I think that's been a big challenge. Certainly has been just not knowing what I don't know, and because of that, things taking longer in certain areas because there was a very simple solution that I just needed explained to me by someone who had the experience in doing that. Another thing I would say is probably organization. And it's kind of tied to the other thing, but I think particularly for my team, which is almost exclusively made up of artists in one way or another.
Yeah.
We've only got one or two people who do not have a music or design background in the team.
Yeah.
So what that means is you've got a team full of right brain, very creative thinkers who are all about innovation and big picture and all that sort of stuff. And that's great for coming up with ideas and also for a lot of the people facing side of things. But actually having someone who is purely analytical and focused on deadlines and deliveries and structure and organization and just lives and breathes spreadsheets, which is just not my favorite bit of what we do. I think so. Staffing, I think understanding where the gaps are in the sort of even just the personalities within the team, that's been a really key thing. And what we've looked to do since then is bring in psychometric testing that we do now as part of our onboarding process to really be able to create a complete picture for the whole team for where those gaps are. So I'd really recommend to anyone doing that because it's been a game changer for how we do things. And it's meant that we've understood the longevity of certain candidates as well, because it's not just they say the right things in the interview, but it's like this person actually has the skills to be able to continue to deliver in these areas long into the future.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's something we do a lot in what we do, and ultimately training the team in the principles that sit behind it allow people to communicate better between themselves. It's a great mechanism for building strong teams and with great communication, I think, because understanding that some people will perhaps flower things a little bit in their language, other people will be very blunt. They're both trying to communicate the same information just in different ways, and start to accept and understand that is really key. Wowzers, that's fantastic. So obviously you've learned, you have done some, invested in some business courses. What are some of the sort of biggest learnings you've had in and about business, whether that's from the courses or just by pushing through?
So I think there's a few really key things that have kind of made the difference over the years. I think one of them was understanding the corporate structure, really understanding who reports to who, how is this organized, and being able to delegate bits to other people. Because I think coming from no corporate experience, other than maybe the odd internship here and there over the years, the understanding of how those relationships exist and also the responsibilities that different people have within an organization, understanding how those are sort of broken down is really difficult when you're having to just learn it by doing it, as opposed to going, no, this is a pre-existing system. This is how this manager is responsible for these people who then are accountable in this way, and creating those systems of accountability when I wasn't necessarily using those for myself either. That's been a real learning curve, is trying to understand who reports to who, and not, I don't need to be involved in every bit of what's going on. Because for so long, so much of it just existed in my head, and I knew where everything had to go, but it meant that without having that proper communication with the team so that everyone knew where we were actually working towards, not just do this task so that this happens, it was, this is where we're building towards, this is what the long-term goal, the long-term strategy is, this is how you fit into that, this is how you individually will develop in this position. And understanding that, I think that was a real learning curve of also understanding that it makes sense that not everyone will be in the same way committed to what we're doing as I would be, because, and that's a real people skill to have to learn, is that my assumption was like, right, well, obviously we all work here, so we're all doing this in the same way, but obviously it means so much more to me than it does to someone else in the team. So trying to make sure that we're all aligned in terms of forward momentum and goals, what we're working towards, so that everyone knows the value of what they do, because I'd never had a boss that I could sort of look to and say, right, that's how I want to do things, and how they are with their staff, that's how I want to be. Because prior to doing this, I'd been a piano teacher and a music teacher, sort of for private lessons, or worked in hospitality. And while there were nice people working there, there wasn't anyone who I ever sort of looked at as a titan of business and went, they've got the right idea.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. The only thing that came to mind in many ways is also, and this is where sort of we have a coaching approach to what we do, is there are ways to do it, but it's okay to do it differently. I mean, obviously that's what you're doing is in your industry right now, and it's sort of overlaying standard structures, but allowing them to be modifiable if necessary to fit your needs and your structures, and I guess a new way of doing things on, working online primarily or only. It may require to change some things a little bit, but no, absolutely fascinating. So great to hear those learnings. And as I mentioned, you're probably aware we're a coaching organisation.
Sure.
Keen to know who the best coaches are you've worked with, whether that's in business, sport, or life in general.
The best coaches I've worked with.
Yes.
So there are 3 people who have been really, really helpful for what I've done. 4 people, I'd say. So
Brilliant.
My uncle Richard Mellor, he runs a sort of conglomerate of companies in Blackburn called Cummins Mellor. So they have Chef's Jobs UK, they have a DBS check company, personnel checks, and then Cummins Mellor recruitment. And it was actually him who, when I was in my first year of university and I went to see him and I told him that I was just not enjoying what I was doing and I just wanted to just be working and not sitting around talking about other people who'd done the work in the past. He was the one who said, right, so do you know how to do this? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, so what's stopping you from just leaving university? Call it My First Single. He came up with the initial name because I told him that we were just doing beginner artists. Call it My First Single and just start doing it. And I did. And over the years, he has been really, really amazing at sort of helping with the different stages of the business and advising about how to do different things.
Yep.
Until 2 weeks ago, I was in his office in Blackburn and we were talking about scaling up different teams and sort of hierarchy and structure. And he was really helpful there. Then his wife, my aunt Michelle, is the same. She's very more sort of organizationally focused and people focused. So a lot of stuff around organizing people and motivating and incentivizing has come from her. They're a great sort of power business couple in the north. And then I suppose the other people really have been my parents, honestly. So my mum is an executive coach and my dad is an actor and director. And so I've been able to get a really interesting, again, that right brain, left brain thing.
Yeah.
Of my dad is like solely right brain, has these like big picture ideas, is really, really good to talk stuff through with and always has really helpful insight. And my mum as well, in the same way, I can bounce ideas off and she'll be able to pull some experience or something that she's worked on elsewhere and say, well, this is how they've done it in this organization and this is how we would normally do it. So it makes a really, really good team.
Really?
And I think having those people around you who have that varied opinion and varied life experience that mean that they can come at the same problem in 4 completely different ways so that you can then filter that down and create a sort of amalgam of all of those solutions. That is been invaluable over these last few years. And I think I wouldn't be in the position that I am now if I hadn't had that level of support. And I think, it's just, I've been very fortunate in that my family have been really keen to help wherever they can and have really interesting experiences that they can pull from to give that advice.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was going to say what interesting and disparate set of people to have that advice on. Wonderful. And have you either from them or from other areas, have you developed any favourite quotes or sayings that you use on a regular basis? I love to collect them. So is there any things that you would say on a regular basis?
I mean, I suppose there's a couple of things that there's like, I suppose the 3 things that I've always repeated loads. The first one is, there was a great quote from, I don't know who it was. It might be Steve Jobs. It might not be. It's the quote is that creativity is subtraction. It's about taking away as much as you can so that you just have the absolute minimum of what you need to get the point across. As soon as you add too much onto it, it gets complicated. And I always try and think about that. I mean, I suppose it's a slightly fancy way of just saying less is more, I guess, really. But I think to create innovative solutions, it's about cutting things away, not adding new things.
Yeah, great. Love it.
And that really came from that quote. But for many years, my mum had told me this story about my grandma, who she was a primary school teacher in North London for many years.
Yeah.
And she used to teach primary school kids, so really young kids. And there used to be this thing where they would once a term have the parents come in to look at the paintings and the pictures that the kids had done. It was like a little exhibition of all the kids' work, and parents would always come in and say to my grandma, how do you get the kids' work looking so good? Because in comparison to the next class along, those were all absolutely messy, it's pretty standard kids' drawings that you'd expect. But the pictures that in my grandma's class were always really neat and tidy. They were always very clear and really well put together. And my grandma said that it was actually a really simple solution. It wasn't about teaching the kids anything. It was about knowing when to take the picture away from them. Because if they had it forever, they would just keep adding to it and keep adding bits to it. And overall, it would just become this like jumbled mess. But if you took it at the right time, you had this really clear picture of what it was supposed to be, because they knew when to stop. And with all the systems that we implement within the company, I always try to consider, okay, are we taking away all the bits that we don't need, or are we just adding more and more bits onto this? Because the more bureaucracy there is, the more complicated things become. So I think always creativity is subtraction, always trying to remove as many bits of whatever it is that you can do as possible is a really, really key thing to do.
I love that. Linking those two together, I think there's a quote by Einstein that says, if you can't explain to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And I think that it's similar sort of situation, isn't it? Simplicity is, as you say, is creativity. Love it.
Yeah. I think the thing that my uncle always said to me is just, he always says double your prices, because it's better to do twice as much, or better to charge twice as much and do half the work. I've not always seen eye to eye with him on that, because I think that a big portion of I think that's probably true for a lot of industries, and there are elements of what we do wherein that does apply.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think so much about what our core value is as a company and what we can provide to people is accessibility.
Yes, understand.
And as soon as you take away that accessibility, it kind of defeats the object. Now, I see us as being a scale business, so something that it works, and we're seeing this now, it works when there are multiple projects on. So it's not huge margins and huge profit on each individual track that we do, or each individual project. It's in the aggregate, we end up making more, because it's about getting more people in, and once they're in, they continue to book for a longer term because of the quality of the service. There are areas in which that does apply, where we can increase pricing, but I think that's more to do with creating maybe a higher tier, which is something we are doing at the moment. So we have like our entry level here. This is consumer facing. This is for if you want to make some music, whether you're a careerist or whether you're doing it for a hobby, whatever. Here's how you can do it. Super fun, accessible, great quality. What we also have is this sort of higher tier, where we essentially sign artists, but rather than signing them and saying, right, it's based on a percentage, it's we're going to do all of your branding and design, all your marketing and promotion, all your PR and all the production, everything that you need, and it's this much a month, and then it's unlimited. And that is only accessible to a certain tier of customer that can afford that. But I do think there's value in just the thinking of, you could charge twice as much, and then you only need to do half as many. And it does factor in to decisions whether or not I directly act on it or not. It is something that is always in consideration when we're modeling pricing, or even just to do with like capacity of work, if we're able to do that. I think those would be the main two, to be honest.
It makes perfect sense. We time and time again see most businesses undervalue and therefore underprice what they do. And I totally get the accessibility point, which is a point of difference I think is key. But as you say, once we've established value and potentially perhaps the client has the ability to invest in that value, I often say, if you put your hands here, most people price is below value, and all of that is lost profit, because this is what people would pay if they just understand the value of what we do. So but I totally get the accessibility piece, but that having some sort of multi-tiered structure makes perfect sense. Wonderful, I love that. Thank you for that. And what would you say you've learned about yourself over this journey, Joe?
A lot, I think, over the last few years. I mean,
I would think so.
I think, I mean, I think the first big discovery, and I think the big learning point personally was not just being okay with the fact that I wasn't going to be like, there were bits that were gaps in my knowledge and my ability. And so I needed to accept that I couldn't be all things to every bit of the company, because actually that's why you have staff, and it's not just one person doing the whole thing. That's why you bring great people into the team. And so the first one of those was, about understanding that there were gaps in what I could do, and gaps in my knowledge and gaps in my skill set. I think for a long time, the bit that I really struggled with was managing people, especially with a growing team of creatives. That was really tricky, because actually not coming from a background of any sort of corporate experience, and only really working in hospitality or like that kind of ilk of work. The relationship between manager and staff member was, I didn't really understand how to play that. There was an element of feeling really grateful, because it was this thing that I just started in my room, and so I was really grateful that people would come on board and want to come and work for us. And that then meant that actually, from a sort of structure and discipline standpoint, and actually having clarity around how that relationship worked and accountability, I was very matey with a lot of the people I was working with. And that then meant that, whilst it still now, of course, good relationship, like friendly relationship with all the people who work for the team, but that when you become it's sort of when the line blurs between friends and people who are working for you, who you're paying, it can get complicated. And so I think it's taken many years to learn how to navigate that. And I probably, in some places, there's still room for improvement in that area, because I really like spending time with people who are working together, because I really like the kinds of people who would come and work at the company, because it's my kind of people. But I think that understanding that I needed to be firmer in some places, and also accept that I can't really be, hanging out with people who I work with all the time, because people need separation, and people need distance between the two things, and a balance between stuff. That actually, if you're at work working together all day, and then in the evening, every night you're going out to the pub, or like you're doing stuff together, it's too much time to be spending with someone. And also because when you hit 6 p.m, it's the roles change as well, and that's really confusing, and it's kind of impossible to totally separate the two things. I think as well, understanding that naturally I'm not an organized person. Not at all. That is a learned skill, and it took a really long time to understand that it's top down, the dynamic within a company. So if you are not organized, the company is not organized.
Agreed.
Making sure that I'm at meetings 5 minutes early, making sure I'm prepped for all my meetings, making sure I'm not rescheduling anything. It's when I say that something is going to happen, that I'm going to do something, that happens, and I deliver on that thing. And people learn from that's the way that we do things at Online Recording Studio. Other than that, I would say that is kind of other than that, it's really organization and people management are kind of the two things that I've really had to learn that are not naturally things that I would do. I think the idea is that the next hire we make will be an operations person entirely. So so they will be in nothing customer facing. And so I don't need someone who is like super extroverted type. Sort of, I don't need another person like that in the company, because we've got loads of really fun people like that. I need someone who absolutely lives and breathes organization and structure, because I have to just accept I'm never going to be that good at that. You have to, part of the role of the CEO is to know where those gaps are and fill them with the right people, not fill them with yourself. Because I'm realizing that now that we've scaled up and added more staff to the team, that I'm finding I have so much more time to focus on the bits that I'm actually good at and I can actually work at, and not spending time doing things that are taking twice as long because I don't really know how to do them.
And if we don't enjoy them, we tend to take longer over them as well, don't we? Let's be perfectly frank.
Absolutely.
I know when I'm at home and I'm facing a task I don't really want to do when I start doing the ironing, because I hate ironing. But it's if something is so bad that I have to go and do some ironing to avoid it, then I know I need to be delegating that pretty sharply, I have to say. But I think it was Brian Tracy said, the best, most effective organizations are those where most people spend most of their time doing the three things they really love and they're really good at, which is quite different to this idea of strengthening our weaknesses. And you know, I think that there's been a big drive historically that you strengthen your weaknesses and you try and, but way better. Let's just do what we really love and good at, and find people that the things that we don't like and we're not good at, somebody else will love and will be really good at. And I think that's the key, isn't it, to building an effective organization, is to go, I don't like it, but somebody else will. And so let's find that person and let's get there when they, rub their hands. Oh, I can't wait to be doing that.
Exactly. I think, and that's actually a really key point, is that the understanding that everyone has kind of different motivations and different passions.
Yes.
That's a huge thing, because, and actually there's someone on the team now, Savannah, who's our head of sales, who has a lot more corporate experience than I do. She joined the team earlier this year, and she's been great at explaining a lot of this sort of stuff about motivations to me, because actually we had incentive systems in place for our producers because we wanted them to have some sales responsibility, nothing major, but really just getting people booked in for more projects or adding extra things onto their projects, that kind of thing. But the motivations of someone who's studied their life to become a producer and then becomes a music producer are entirely different to someone who is a salesperson. Yep. They're not really motivated. Whilst they are motivated by money in a certain way, that is a percentage of what motivates them. Salespeople, far and away, the majority of what motivates them is making money and taking money home at the end of the week. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But for the producers, it was about finding other ways to incentivize for that sort of thing. Because actually just saying, hey, you'll get a commission off the back of that, it was a bit like, okay, so that didn't work. And so Savannah's been really great at kind of explaining, right, we need to understand what the motivations and goals are for different people in the team, so that we can create systems around sort of giving people an opportunity to thrive in a way that they understand what's next for them if this happens. That's been really invaluable, because again, I've assumed foolishly for years and up until maybe the last couple of years that everyone was basically motivated by the same thing as me, which was, whoa, this is cool. What we're doing right here could be really industry changing and really innovative and really exciting. And whilst for some of them it's like, yeah, we're doing a cool thing, at the end of the day they just want to make music with people. They just want to enjoy making music, and that's fine. They don't need to be pulled into that top level in the same way.
No, absolutely. Similarly, I used to think everyone thought like me, which would be a bit of a messed up world, to be perfectly frank with you. But it is. But once they understood that they don't, they're thinking their way. Therefore, my job as a leader and communicator is to communicate in their language, not in mine. And once we do that, we can really build strong bonds and communicate effectively. So totally get that. Brilliant. And use of motivators. There are quite a few behavioral profiling tools that also can do a motivation tool, which you may be familiar with, and start to pick out some of those key motivators. So wonderful. It sounds like in a great place. So looking forward then, Joe, what does the future look like, and what are the main challenges that you face, if any?
For sure. So I think the roadmap for the next kind of 6-12 months is scaling up our production team. I probably want to double the size of the production team. I kind of want to be at a point where we're looking at about 100 new tracks a month. I think we're on track to do that in the next 6 months, and that will be really exciting to get to that position. Some of the really exciting partnerships that we have coming up over the next 3 months are, one is with a company called Pirate Studios, and they are another really sort of disruptive music industry service. Basically, they are, if you've ever been to a Pure gym, that's like those 24-hour access gyms that are unstaffed, and you get a code to get in and you pay a monthly subscription. It's super cheap because they have low overheads because there's no staff. This exists for recording studios and rehearsal spaces, and it's called Pirate. And so they have all of these studios all around the country, and there's loads of them. There's about 100 locations where you can go in 24 hours a day. You have a code to go in, you pay £10 an hour to go in and use one of those studios. So the idea for this partnership is, first of all, just to kind of introduce each other to each other's audiences. But the scope of that is that eventually you could be in a situation wherein, if you don't have a great home recording setup, but you want to work with a really high-end producer that's on the online recording studio team, you can go into your local Pirate Studios and have your producer on the other end of a video call in that space. So you're in a space that has great monitors, like great speakers, great sound system in there, good microphones so you can record what you need to, and you can still work remotely with a producer. Say you're in Leeds and you want to work with a producer who's in New York, that's absolutely fine. We can and do that every week.
Yeah.
But you can go in somewhere and spend very, very little to be in a really, really high-end space to do that, even though your producer and their session musicians and everything that's going on is at the other end. Equally, if you're in a session and say you're a band, not a solo artist, and you're in a pirate space and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're recording your album and you realize, oh right, we need a saxophone solo on this track. That's what it's missing. None of us play saxophone. Right, let's log on to the database and see there are 5 online recording studio saxophone players available who are set up to record wherever they are in the world. I can get them on Zoom right now. They can record in real time onto the project that I have on my screen. And then you have complete accessibility to them. It's right, that costs £100. There's your saxophone player. Yeah. And that to me feels like the next step in how music production works, in that everything is up for grabs. Everything is there for you as and when you need it. So that previously, where producers have used samples for that kind of thing, they've gone through a library of samples and they've gone, right, this saxophone solo is the right sort of thing. Maybe we'll drag that, we can make that work. No. What you can do is in real time get a saxophone player who's over in Sydney, Australia, and say, right, I want this, I want you to go over these chords, I want this kind of style, let's go. And they'll just record it in real time for you there. So creating this huge potential and toolkit for producers to be able to make exactly what they're looking for, not a close approximation to what they were looking for because they've had to find something that will make do. They can have complete control, and that's it. It's control for people. So finding more ways that we can sort of change the way producers and artists work like that is key. There's another partner that we're working with actually that I realized that we're under NDA, so I can't actually talk about that yet. But it's a collaborative technology that will allow that allows you to have sort of remote, it's a cloud-based collaborative technology that means that you can give and receive feedback on projects much more easily. We'll be giving more information about that at the end of September. That's going to be a really integral part of how we work moving forward. Yeah, I wish I could say more, but unfortunately not.
No, that's a shame. But yeah, maybe we can. I'd definitely love to come back and speak in a number of months and see how things are going. By which time, hopefully, you can tell us more. So that sounds absolutely amazing. And just a couple of things before we wrap up. What would you say to anyone that's thinking of going into business right now, Joe?
I think make sure you're listening very closely to the market. I think that I don't quite know how I got into a situation where when I started this, there were not really any other people doing it. Yeah. That I wish I could say was because I'd listened and noticed that there was a gap. It really wasn't that, and I would be being very dishonest if I said that I knew that was what was going on. I just was like, right, let's do this, and I just stuck to it. I think making sure that you really research who else is out there doing the thing that you're doing. And actually, if you can't find someone else who's doing it, question why first there's no one else doing it. That's a really key thing. But I think do it. I mean, I'm a big advocate of just finding a way to do what you can do, but it all just comes down to your persistence. Like if you're going to start, if you want to start a business, then you totally should. But you should also accept that in order to do that, you're going to have to sacrifice quite a lot of stuff over the next few years to get to a point where that's actually going to work. And you need to be the person who carries on past the point where other rational, normal people would give up and go, yeah, no, this isn't going to work. Because so many times over the last 5.5 years, anyone who looked at it would say, you should stop this now. Like it's not working here, it's not making enough money, or it's not doing this. And actually quite stubbornly just went, no, we persevere, we carry on, we find a way to carry on. And actually it works. The only thing, I listen to a lot of these sorts of podcasts where you've got people talking about business, and often you have these really, really successful people on there who come on and they say, yeah, just follow your dreams and just work hard and just do it. And they never account for the fact that there's such an element of luck to it. And you can't guarantee success in anything. What you can do as the individual and as the entrepreneur is do everything you can to maximize your chances. Yes. And that's all you can do.
Yeah. 100%. It unfortunately, it doesn't always work out, but the entrepreneurial spirit typically means we go again, you know, and that's the point. We just go again. And
Exactly.
it's if it's the first one, great. If it's not, it'll be the second, third, or fourth one. And that's the commonality, I think, as opposed to as you say, the idea itself. If you know, some people find the perfect sweet spot and it grows from there. And sometimes it's just that consistent bloody mindedness. I often say, when you talk about that, I often say to people in business, especially that in that sort of challenging time, is it working? Is it going to make it? That a business is often like a bit like a Rubik's cube. You probably won't. I remember it the first time. You might remember them, but you know, you can look at it and it's just messed up colours. And yet sometimes, if you know what you're doing, I don't. 3 moves and it's finished. And
Sure.
sometimes we're not that far away. It just looks really messed up. And it's just having that will see it through. Sometimes, obviously, you know, let's check the numbers just to make sure we're still in the right place. But often it's just sheer bloody mindedness, I think.
Yeah.
Looking back at what you've done so far, is there anything if you started your business again that you do differently, do you think?
Yeah, loads. Yeah, I think, I mean, if I went back knowing what I know now, I think that the things that I would focus on early on would be actually getting myself some more skills in place before I tried to jump into new things, because I think I've had quite a gung-ho approach to all of the new stuff. I've gone, right, yeah, oh, that sounds like a good idea. That's what we're going to do now. Let's just do that and dive in. Unfortunately, that's meant that on most of the occasions it's worked out and we've been able to pull through it, but it's also meant that other areas of the business have suffered. So I think there was a business plan originally. I honestly I wrote that business plan because we got an initial bit of Prince's Trust loan at the beginning of about £3,000, £3,500. I wrote the business plan for that and then didn't ever really read it again. Yep. And I think that having timelined plans for certain aspects of what we're doing and having key goals and targets in place and written down and structured would be the main thing I would do differently, because I think it's very easy to lose track of the time of things happening over the course of getting really caught up and excited about how things are going. And I don't know, maybe I wouldn't do anything differently. It's good now. It's like, I think some of the relationships with staff that I've had over the years, and where stresses in the system and stresses in how things have not been working out have led to breakdowns of certain relationships in places. I think that's something that I do hold on to, and I think that's what I'm trying to learn from as much as possible. So I would say on that side of things, that would be done differently. But I don't know, I think based on how long we've been doing it and how varied the approach has been to all the different areas, I think we're in a much better position than any of our competitors, because actually we've tried so many different iterations and angles of how we can do things that it was cool during COVID. Cool. Well, I did take some enjoyment during COVID of seeing all these companies suddenly who were just brick and mortar recording places going, oh, right, we need to work out how we do this online. Yeah. And then seeing them make all these mistakes that we'd made like 4 years previously. That was a nice moment of like, okay, yeah, I can appreciate this now. This is kind of cool. But I think it's important to not spend too much time wallowing on like what went wrong in the past. I think I've done that before, and actually it's not good for your productivity. I think you should take the lessons from stuff and try and move on from things as quickly as you can, because you need to be able to kind of, you know, bob and weave around different things. And if you're carrying all of this stuff and you're not talking to yourself internally properly as you should be, I think you can very quickly get to a sort of point where things can get on top of you and it becomes fairly unmanageable. Yeah,
again, totally agree. It's just like you know, get rid of the baggage and just accepting that it's a learning. It's you know, if we've learned from, we're not going to do it again, then it has value. And if it doesn't, then just move on. Totally makes sense. And finally, if you could go back in time and do so, what advice would you give to an 18-year-old you?
Start this earlier, because there's no need to go and study music production, because I learned almost nothing. I met really good people, so I do value the people that I met and being surrounded by those people. But yeah, save I mean, I only paid for the first year, but what was it? About 13 grand.
Yep.
Save that 13 grand and just, well, I didn't have it because it was obviously a student loan, but don't be 13 grand in debt for absolutely nothing, because there's no job that requires a degree in music production for you to get that job. And I know, because I hire music producers and I don't look at their qualifications. I listen to their portfolio. So yeah, I think start it earlier. I think realizing if we got there even earlier, we could be even further ahead now.
Yes, makes perfect sense. Well, Joe, it's been absolutely fascinating, delightful, and really, really interesting and entertaining. So thank you so much for your time today. And just if anybody's watching would like to get in touch with you or the online recording studio, what's the easiest way to do so?
So you can find us at onlinerecordingstudio.com. We've just had a brand new website put up. There's a bunch of examples of work that we've done and artists talking about their experience. A lot of people comment on our before and afters. Even if you're not a big music fan, they're pretty cool. So you could check those out. On Instagram, we're at The Online Recording Studio. On Facebook, we're Online Recording Studio, or you can send me an email. You find our email addresses on the website, or connect on LinkedIn, although I'm not great at LinkedIn, but I will get back to you within at least 6 months. That's about how regularly I check it. But Instagram is probably the quickest and most direct way to get to us.
Right. Wonderful. Well, again, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.